Napoleon Bonaparte has long been respected as one of the most successful and influential military leaders in history. Though he found fame primarily through the French Revolution, his rise to power began even before that. Napoleon's background and upbringing were also instrumental in his military success. Napoleon was born on August 15, 1769, on the French island of Corsica. His parents, Laetitia and Carlo, were well off but not exceedingly rich. They claimed to be of the nobility, yet these claims were never officially confirmed. The Bonaparte family most likely belonged to the bourgeois class. Napoleon's father, Carlo, was once involved in the Corsican resistance to French occupation. However, Carlo made personal peace with the French when leader Pascal Paoli was forced to flee and became assessor to the royal court. Though he was born in Corsica, most of Napoleon's childhood was spent on the French mainland. He traveled to France when he was just 9 years old, attending a religious school in the eastern region. As he was not used to the different customs and traditions of France, Napoleon lived much of his early life as an outsider. Corsican was the boy's first language, and he spoke French with a heavy accent that was often the subject of teasing from many of his peers. However, Napoleon has never been one to give up, and was even quoted with saying, "The word impossible is not in my dictionary." Perhaps foreshadowing his military future, Napoleon attended a military academy at Braine-le-Château for 5 years before being admitted to an elite military school in Paris, l'École Militaire. He spent just 1 year there before graduating in 1785. Napoleon's family had always been welcomed back to his home in Corsica. However, this all changed when Napoleon's younger brother accused Paoli of treason. Following this accusation, the Bonapartes were no longer welcome. Hurt by the rejection from his homeland, Napoleon turned to France as his new home. Napoleon's military career began well before the famed Revolution of 1789. After graduating from l'École Militaire in Paris, Napoleon was named a second lieutenant in l'Affaire Artillery Regiment, the first artillery regiment of the French army. Early on, Napoleon was a vehement Corsican nationalist and spent the early years of the Revolution fighting in Corsica. However, following the conflict with Paoli, he and his family fled to the French mainland. Later on, in 1792, he was promoted to captain in the regular French army. Napoleon won his first major military victory at the Siege of Toulon in 1793. This caused him to be promoted to brigadier general. He was just 24 years old at the time. In October of 1795, a royalist mob had threatened to overthrow the government, and Napoleon was asked for help in dealing with the crowd. In response, Napoleon fired a whiff of grape shot into the mob and dispersed it, earning the respect and gratitude of the government. He was promoted to the general of the division and given command of the Army of the Interior. Napoleon's military career was growing, and it was growing fast.
On March 11th of 1796, Napoleon left France to take control of his country's troops in Italy. When he arrived, however, he had his work cut out for him. The 37,000 soldiers of the French army in Italy were demoralized, poorly fed, and had gone without pay for months. They were hardly the proud fighting force that Napoleon had dreamed of commanding. Yet, he was still determined to lead his army, and of course himself, to greatness. In 1796, Napoleon greeted his soldiers with the rallying cry, "Soldiers, you are naked and ill-fed. Government owes you much and can give you nothing. The patience and courage you have shown in the midst of these rocks are admirable, but they gain you no renown. No glory results to you from your endurance. It is my design to lead you into the most fertile plains of the world. Rich provinces and great cities will be in your power. There you will find honor, glory, and wealth." Napoleon was nothing if not a born leader. With his newly energized troops, Napoleon took the offensive in an attempt to defeat the army of Piedmont before their Austrian allies could arrive. His strategic prowess allowed him to force his opponents to surrender in only 2 weeks. Emboldened, Napoleon turned his army towards the larger foe, Austria. The two nations struggled throughout the winter of 1796 to 1797. However, by late January, a decisive French triumph in the Battle of Rivoli virtually ensured Napoleon's victory. French troops were able to advance to only 100 kilometers from the Austrian capital of Vienna, forcing the Austrians to surrender. In his first act of political autonomy over the Directory, Napoleon negotiated the treaties of Leoben and Campo Formio entirely on his own. Though the Directory had only hoped to temporarily take parts of northern Italy and exchange them with Austria for Belgium, Napoleon elected to take permanent possession of both Belgium and northern Italy. Napoleon restored the confidence of the French people in their military, and they adored him for it. Though he had openly defied the Directory and proven he was out of their control, they were forced to welcome him home to France as a national hero.
In an ongoing trade war between Britain and France, Napoleon hoped to disrupt British trade routes to India and establish French dominance in the east. He sailed to Egypt in July of 1798 with 35,000 French troops, capturing the port of Malta. On July 1st, 1798, he captured the city of Alexandria, signifying to him that it would be a successful expedition.
I was full of dreams. I saw myself founding a new religion, marching into Asia, riding an elephant, a turban on my head, and in my head the new Quran.
Upon reaching the city of Cairo, Napoleon and his men discovered that the British general Horatio Nelson blew up the French fleet docked off the coast of Egypt. The French troops and Napoleon were essentially stuck in Egypt. After a failed attempt of invading Syria, Napoleon heard of the threat of Austria and Prussia against France and decided to sail back home. He secretly left Egypt, leaving 30,000 French troops stranded in Egypt. In 1799, Napoleon returned to France, where he was regarded as a hero, even though his expedition wasn't that successful. In France at the time, a political group seized power of the revolution after the fall of Robespierre in 1795. The group was called the Directory and was made up of 5 members, including Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès, who wanted a new system and recruited Napoleon to work with him, believing that Napoleon would be a perfect puppet. The Directory was also made up of the upper and the lower houses of the legislature, the Council of the Ancients, and the Council of 500, which was presided by Napoleon's brother, Lucien Bonaparte. November 7, 1799, Lucien Bonaparte told all the councils that there is a Jacobin uprising and that they should all move to Chateau de Saint-Cloud for safety. He put Napoleon in control of 6,000 troops in Paris to protect the councils and surround the castle. The Directory was quickly disbanded, with 3 of the 5 directors who were allies of Napoleon, including Sieyès, resigning, and the remaining 2 forced to resign.
The next day, Napoleon stormed the castle, where the 2 remaining councils tried to figure out what to do next. He talked about why he would be a good leader, but failed miserably, and is heckled and physically assaulted. It is only when his brother Lucien convinces the council that Napoleon really isn't all that bad, and to give him a chance, and coupled with Napoleon's army surrounding the castles, do the councils appoint Napoleon, Sieyès, and Roger Ducos as the 3 councils of France.
The Constitution of the year 8 was proclaimed and approved by a plebiscite, a dictator's facade of a representative government, in 1799. The Constitution implemented a complex governmental system with Napoleon at the head, ruling as first consul.
Napoleon desired to consolidate his power through widespread peace in Europe. This led to his second Austrian campaign in 1800. The astonishing thing was that within a month of crossing the Alps for a second time, Napoleon had defeated the Austrians.
Napoleon signed a treaty with Austria in 1801 and one with Britain in 1802. Now Napoleon centered his attention back onto the country he ruled. He began reforming France, civilly and socially, in order to stabilize France after the Revolution. There were new law codes put into place. One of the most important codes was Code Napoleon, which declared that peasants who took noble land in revolution could hold on to their gains. Napoleon issued general amnesty to all exiled, from Jacobins to aristocrats, to return to France.
Napoleon increased restrictions on personal freedoms, like freedom of the press. 60 of 73 newspapers in Paris were banned.
4 hostile newspapers are more to be feared than 1,000 bayonets. Napoleon.
Napoleon signed the Concordat, a new religious agreement with the Catholic Church. This overturned the revolutionary principle of separation of church and state, and reinstituted Catholicism as the religion of the majority of all of France.
In 1802, Napoleon proclaimed himself first consul for life.
Napoleon proclaimed himself emperor in 1804, declaring that he was the heir of Charlemagne. Instead of having the Pope crown him at his coronation in December of 1804, Napoleon crowned himself.
The emperor recreated French aristocracy. The royal court became a public spectacle of pomp and elegance. Court protocol became very complex and regimented.
The emperor is too grand for anybody to tell him the truth. Everybody who surrounds him flatters him all day long. Josephine de Beauharnais.
Napoleon was very uncomfortable with this role, often working long hours in his study to escape from court life.
Still, Napoleon was poised to bring France into a new era and to rule it as a dictator.